Let me talk first about the economy. Number one, as all of you know, and as I am learning each and every day, our economy is very much dependent on the aerospace industry. And we also know that the feds are making a lot of changes, and there'll be some downsizing in the military budget and the aerospace budgets. And what does that mean for Palmdale? It's an important question. A good piece of news I think I heard this morning is that they're working on an extension of the downsizing or the sequestering of the budget to try to get through the first quarter of 2013 without starting to actually do the sequestration. So I think they're trying to craft a deal. That will make a lot of difference for us, because I know there are people in this community who are in the aerospace industry who are wondering each day, you know, what's it going to look like? What's my job going to look like? And all of us are impacted if that industry goes away. So, you know, what's the city doing around that? What are we doing around diversifying? What's happening? And what I'd say is, number one, for the first time in a number of months, maybe for the first time in maybe a couple of years, we're starting to get inquiries from people who want to start new businesses or move here or do things that would help our economy. That's new in the last couple of years, and it's come in a kind of a little clump here where we've gotten 3 or 4 or 5 inquiries. We've not been able to make any of those work yet because they're in those initial stages of checking on sites, trying to understand locations, trying to understand the logistics, trying to look at what we look like compared to other organizations or other communities, and try to make the decision to move here. And that getting them over the edge to move here is a critical question. And again, another thing I want to come back to. There's some things I'm going to come back to that all point to one thing, I think. So let me go, so I think there's some activity. I think we're seeing a little bit of residential activity and a little bit of interest from folks who are landowners and property owners. But again, we're not seeing those 1,000 jobs come here, kinds of things, but we're seeing interest in those potentials. So we're working on that. We're working with the aerospace industry. One of the things that's really important and we're going to have to continue to work on is, in order for Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop to continue to thrive, one of the things they need to do is be able to take the unmanned vehicles that they're working on and move them from Plant 42 onto the restricted airspace at Edwards. And right now they have to have a plane fly, a piloted plane fly with them when they go across between Plant 42 before they get to Edwards Air Force Base. There's some FAA controlled space, and so they, by regulation, have to have somebody fly with them. Well, that costs money, it makes them less efficient, and our community is going up against communities all across the country who want to do unmanned vehicle kinds of work. And so if we can't solve that problem, that's a real issue for the aerospace industry here. And so one of the things that we're hoping to be able to do is convene a group who could work on that and really create a corridor that FAA would approve that would allow them to move those vehicles back and forth from Plant 42 out to Edwards. We had it in our redevelopment budget. We had, and it was like $600,000 or $700,000 set aside in our redevelopment budget to do the study and to work through with FAA to get that work done. And we'll get to the budget in a minute, but this is one of the things that was collateral damage from when the state made a decision to do away with redevelopment agencies. We had a number of other impacts from that, but that's one direct impact from that, is that the ability to do that project is gone. We don't have the money, and we're not going to have that kind of money. And so what we're going to have to do is sit down with the contractor, sit down with the individuals who might benefit from this, and try to figure out what other way, what might we accomplish, what we need to do. So we've got some kind of challenging things that we're working on that all relate back to our economy, and they all relate back to a healthy economy here in the Antelope Valley. So there's a lot of work going on there. In terms of the city's budget, we just passed a budget. You probably read the articles, but just to give you a little bit of background on it, we really put together a 3-part plan. As I said before, we went from 350 employees to 190 before I got here. So there was a lot of hard work that was done by my predecessors, by the staff, We contracted out, we contracted in. We changed the way we do things. We stopped doing things. You know, we used to have a really great fall festival that was enormous, not enormous, it was fairly expensive. It cost a lot of money to put on the fall festival. We had to stop doing that. The Starlight concerts, we used to have, you know, big names. We used to be able to bring in big names who commanded a pretty high price and do it for free. Well, we're not able to do that anymore, so we still have the Starlight concerts. We have these tribute bands, fabulous. I just saw the Eagles the other night. Before that, it was Johnny Cash, and it was also the Beach Boys, and this week I think it's the Stones for $5. It's an amazing venue. It's fabulous. So we're still doing things, you know. And we just opened up a slide at Dry Town, which another slide, which also has driven, I think, 20% growth in our business there. And that particular venue, I think, recovers about 80% of its cost in terms of fees and revenues. So it's like, you know, most parks aren't free. I mean, you know, they cost money, but it's free to go in. So to only have a 20% cost for something like Dry Town is really a benefit to the community without a real big impact on the general fund. So we're working hard to raise that number if possible. But anyway, so we're looking at, you know, a lot of ways to reduce costs. There have been no raises for a number of years. We changed some employee benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So this year, when we got together to put the budget together, we had a couple of things that happened. Number one, again, the state takeaways relative to redevelopment caused us an enormous multi-million-dollar problem in terms of cash flow and in terms of the way we would try to balance the budget. So we had a three-part plan. The first part was to ask employees who might be interested in leaving the organization if they'd be willing to take an incentive to leave. And the idea was that needed to pay for itself in the first year, and then in the second, third, and fourth year, we would get permanent savings from that. Once we did that, then we would go to the departments, and we asked the departments to look at additional 5 or 10% cuts to try to cut programs, cut costs in some way that didn't impact employees or benefits. And then the third piece of that puzzle was, if we had to, then we'd look at employee benefits, or whether we needed to change employee benefits or those kinds of costs. And if that didn't get us there, then we'd be looking at layoffs. So that was sort of our plan. You know, who wants to go voluntarily? What can we cut out of departments? What can we cut out of benefits? And then, if necessary, layoffs. Well, where we ended up was we had about 6 or 7 people who took us up on the buyouts. We had 6 or 7 vacant positions that we kept open, so we went from about 204 employees down to 192. Secondly, we found multi-million dollars of savings that the departments gave us in those 5 and 10% cuts. And then the third piece was we asked employees to take a reduction in, or basically it's a reduction in pay, but it's basically as a result of paying more for their pension costs, and we're phasing that in over time. That allowed us to balance the budget, but we still needed to use some reserves to do that. Our goal next year is to do the same thing, but to cut the reserve use in half, and then the year after to try to make sure that we don't use any reserves. Well, and the entire goal around that is to build a sustainable budget. The other thing we're doing, and you probably read about it in the paper the other day, and it will be on the council agenda tonight, is we've created an entirely new personnel ordinance where all new hires will have less holidays, less sick time, less vacation time. We're cutting the entire pay schedule by 10%, so any new hire that comes in will get paid 10% less, they'll have way less benefits, et cetera, to just kind of reset the landscape for new employees. It may cause some issues over time because you're going to have a new employee who's making less than an existing employee, and for the first year or two that probably be just fine because, you know, they have a new job and they like that, and pretty soon they're going to figure out that they're making a lot less than somebody else, and we're going to hear about it, but it's something we have to do. You know, we have to realign our costs with the market and with the world as it sits. And so that will provide us, again, some additional savings, all of which tries to lead us to sustainability. We need to create a sustainable budget in a sustainable organization.